I'm back, and while I had a fantastic time casting and hosting for the first ever Grand Major for the finals, the team that I coached, Team Secret, took second place at the event. But more important than all that, I was able to see all of my friends that I made in this incredible community along the way. Before we get started, I wanted to announce that I'm opening up my coaching to the public in 2026. So if you want to get coached by me either in private or on stream, join my Coaching Corner Discord server and fill out the included form to sign up. I live stream my coaching every single week on Twitch and YouTube, so make sure you drop a follow over there as well. The only reason I'm able to do this is because of your support. Thank you so much, and now on to the video. After Gremlin, Uni, and Lasagna won the title of Grand Major Champions under the Nightmare banner at TGM 25, Season 8 and its meta had been sealed in a pretty perfect manner. But of course, there were more takeaways from the Grand Major than just what weapons and gadgets were the best to run. Notably, we now have a much tighter grasp on things like timing and vault fights, how to effectively min-max rushing any given point with the default HML loadout, and probably more importantly, how to effectively counter it as well. So before we get into it, let me just break down some of the key strategic takeaways that we learned from the Grand Major. Hiding away from a cash out that your team owns is more important now than ever, and more teams are learning what they can and can't get away with when it comes to playing with this idea more loosely. Vault fights, being either insanely dragged out or instantly forfeited, is the newest additional strat in the box for comp teams and scrims. This makes a ton of sense given how messing up your timing with a late wipe or getting held at range while the other team slips away with a vault and gets the plug, or any other combination of a sub-perfect vault fight can instantly ruin your overall pacing. And the last thing I want to mention here is that now more than ever, it is incredibly important to focus on killing the medium first. Especially with heal beam still being the go-to for mediums, your team's reset potential is infinitely higher if you have heals and defibs and the enemies don't. Now, this video is mostly going to be talking about the current meta team composition that we're seeing in the comp community for the finals. I'll be making a 2026 macro guide soon though, so be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see that as soon as possible. But let's get right into the meat of this video and talk about the new meta. A new champion has entered the arena. HHM is here to stay. HML is still viable, but the survivability and raw damage output from double heavy is just insane to say the least. Let's break it down. One heavy on mesh shield, the other on winch, and medium on heal beam. The mesh heavy should run shack, dome, RPG, and C4. This is the flex heavy. On offense, this heavy acts like the light and should always be at the very front of the action. On defense, playing for the drop with C4 or for opening damage combo with RPG and C4, and most importantly, keeping the rest of the team shielded up. Winch heavy plays a little different. SA-1216, BFR Titan, or Lewis gun. However, in my personal opinion, Lewis should be reserved for the mesh, and if the winch heavy wants to play shack. Winch is for cash out manipulation, but if you're playing into a team that's on HML, this heavy needs to catch the enemy light out as soon as possible. This heavy will also run dome and RPG, as double dome, double RPG is what makes this team comp so juicy. Importantly though, the winch heavy doesn't need C4, since they have the winch should they need to stall on defense, and this opens up the third slot to be used for things like the healing emitter, barricades, or goo. The medium on heal beam is going to run the CBO1 repeater. In my personal opinion, I think the R357 is also incredibly viable in the current meta, but the CBO1 right now is non-negotiable, as it is the best weapon for the medium class at this point, especially if you're playing into HML, although this might change with a future patch. Now, the gadgets for mediums can still be goo, pad, and defibs, but playing double movement, replacing the goo with zipline, is going to be much easier for teams who are adapting straight from HML, since you no longer have that light gateway to teleport you around the map everywhere. This is why the winch heavy has goo grenades as an option, since the mediums most likely won't be running them most of the time. This is the best kind of shakeup that we could ask for with regards to the meta in the finals. Not only is there competing ideologies for what HHM should look like, but there are still HML purists that are sticking to their guns who are being forced to change their utility around to counter HHM, who then need to consider if they're going against HML or HHM. This dynamic creates a rock, paper, scissors effect, where teams are changing up their loadouts with respect to the loadouts that other teams are bringing into the arena, which means that we can expect to see rapid rapid iterations of the meta over the next few months. But before you close the video and queue ranked with this, let me talk about how the meta got here, as this meta is still developing, and since things can change so fast, and there's a couple of variations to this that we'll need to get into later. So it is incredibly important that you understand the context of the things that stayed the same between Season 8 and 9, and the new things in Season 9, and more importantly, how that all led to where we are now. Let's start with talking about the current meta light loadout, the V9S. Now, the V9S has always been strong. It just never had range before, but now that it has range, the V9S is like Babby's first LH1, or you can think of it as more of a long-range M11. But because of the V9S and the CB01 repeater being prevalent, there's a need to mitigate that damage at range. Combine that with the winch nerf being directly tied to the mesh shield, and you have mesh shield becoming the best overall option for the heavy. So with light running V9S, medium running CB01, any light will be instantly deleted if they get caught lacking. Combine that with the BFR still being strong at range, and the light getting gateway nerfed as well, some teams started to adapt and just got rid of the light entirely. This concept was truly started with Team Tall, Dark, and Handsome, a team comprised of the former heavy and light from Envy, Busy and Stooge, and the former medium from SSG, Normalize. But this HHM team setup leaves a critical gap in the team comp. If you don't have a light and the medium is supposed to stay alive and use the heal beam and defib, then how do you stay aggro? Well, this is where the mesh heavy comes in. If your winch heavy is now the normal heavy of the group, then by default that means that the mesh heavy has to effectively replace the light class. This is a lot easier to do than you might think with the new mesh changes. And this leads us into the final light change that's come about because of the HHM meta, the glitch grenade. That's right, the glitch grenade is back on the menu, and even though it just got nerfed to only have one charge instead of two. When you're dealing with double dome and a mesh shield, it's a necessary component to have in your loadout. However, this means that it has to be traded for something else, and though I loved it so, unfortunately the Vanish Bomb is the most natural candidate on the chopping block. Especially if an HML team is playing into HHM, one of the best advantages that they need to keep is the gateway and the H+ infuser. So the glitch is the one piece of offensive util that the light should keep on hand in order to make pinch engagements easier. Okay, now let's get into the variations I spoke about earlier. Mesh heavy running Shaq is pretty much non-negotiable from what I've seen, but you can run Lewis as well depending on how aggro you want to get with your team. But that means that the winch heavy should be running Shaq in its place, since the Shaq 50 is too good to leave unpicked by at least one of the two 350 HP tanks on your team. By keeping the mesh heavy on Shaq, you open more options for the winch heavy to choose from, SA1216 or BFR being dependent on map and skill level of the heavy in question. But this choice does change where your winch heavy should play. If you're playing into an HML team, the BFR plus repeater combo is still absolutely unmatched against any light that should find themselves out of position. If the light is playing with the 9-3R or M11 instead of the V9S, the SA1216 is still a fantastic choice for the winch heavy to play. During the breakout show match on January 15th, we saw a ton of SA1216 use, and for a good reason. Playing into another HHM team though, I don't think the BFR Titan is better than the SA1216 right now. However, keep in mind that you will need to have your medium absolutely carry at the long range if you choose to leave the BFR behind. That's just the weapons though. On the gadget side of things, I think the double movement is necessary on the medium. But if you are really careful and confident in your team, then you could keep goo instead of the zip. For the winch heavy, this leaves one gadget slot available to use the heal ball, the barricades, or the grav cube. Now another alternative that I've seen only a couple of times is double mesh, but I think that's going to be very map dependent and very dependent on what kind of team you're playing into as well. But if you're finding that you just can't get enough space away from the enemy repeater or V9S, there is nothing wrong with running double mesh shield, so you can close that gap easier. Speaking of closing the gap, let's talk about some ground rules and how to use this comp effectively. Double dome and double RPG is 100% necessary for this setup to work well. These two gadgets are the strongest and most versatile pieces of utility in the entire game, and I don't need to explain why. Especially if you're forcing a steal on the enemy's cash out, having two domes plus at least one mesh means that the enemy team has to play close into you. This is one reason why mesh plus winch is strongly preferred compared to the double mesh. Another major rule is that the medium is never first. The medium on the team must make a conscious effort to always be behind the mesh heavy no matter what, especially since they'll be running a repeater. What are you doing up front anyway? Come on. I would say in addition to this, your team should always try to find any isolated players first. If you know the enemy has one player at an angle or playing just a little bit far from the heavy, drop everything else and aggress the entire combined weight of your team onto that player. Similar to this, initial damage is mandatory at range. This is why the BFR Titan is pretty important. If the medium is prevented from peeking, they can always back up and heal the winch heavy while they peek with the BFR Titan. And here's the most important part of the video, a little treat for everyone who's watched this all the way through. If you are attacking an enemy's cash out, the final rule here is to always force the point and ignore the kite with double heavy. With 2 domes, you can guarantee the space to steal if you can deal with the stall utility in a timely manner. Double dome will force the enemy with a goo grenade to come in for the stall, so winch heavy should be ready to grab them out. If the enemy light is running glitch, then be careful to play around that with the double dome. The heavy throwing dome number 2 should be standing far enough away where they don't get glitched, allowing their dome to still connect. Now, remember that this is not infallible, and there will be teams that can break through this. The finals is a game about skill expression at the end of the day, and we are finally seeing teams experiment with unique compositions that are being tested against the classic HML, as well as mirror comps. But there is a really crucial thing to point out here. HML is proving to be more viable in cash out, and HHM is proving to be more viable in final round 3v3 format. We haven't had a lot of time to see it in competitive cash out just yet, since those scrims are a lot rarer compared to the 3v3 scrims. But during the Breakout Master Series show match on January 15th, we saw teams running HHM struggle in cash out and then turn around and win during final round 3v3s. Now, is this definitive proof that HHM sucks in cash out? No, of course not, and there are still so many things that need to be discovered about this. And this is the #1 thing that you should be looking at moving forward if you care about the comp scene and seeing what these pro players are doing, especially if you're trying to learn more about how they're thinking. Truthfully, I am really excited for a meta shakeup in the finals. Like I said earlier, the rock, paper, scissors dynamic is really refreshing and keeps every match feeling more exciting than the last, which in turn is going to make the upcoming tournaments in 2026 absolutely electric. But what do you think? Do you think that most teams will rock HHM in 2026? Do you think that teams will still run HML in cash out and only make the switch in final round format? Are you going to be trying HHM in ranked or world tour? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I would love to know what your thoughts are. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video, and don't worry, you'll see me around.